Welcome to Pesto Comics Audio Edition. This is the entry for January 29th, 2025. Do you need to NSFW? Taboo and Kickstarter. Welcome back. Last week, I opened my post with a story of optimism. Even with all the turmoil and strife in the world, I truly felt like everyone was feeling pretty good about the year ahead. Boy, did that wear off quickly. I've done myself the favor of not digging too deep into social media rabbit holes this week. More than anything, there seems to be a lot of the old engagement baiting that I thought we were getting away from. I remain hopeful that we can turn a corner this year. I still think escapism is the way to go versus dystopias and apocalyptic settings. We're already getting our fill of that in real life. Equally optimistic is the release schedule for Pesto Comics and beyond. As it stands, I'm planning 7 more Kickstarter campaigns this year, with 5 comics and 2 prose works, and 6 novellas in 2 series for Kindle Unlimited. A lot of this work is in various stages of progress, so I'm not feeling overwhelmed by any of it yet, but burnout is a big risk as it all relies on things moving forward smoothly. None of this counts the first campaign of the year either, one which started the year off with a bang. Naked Kaiju Woman was built for Kickstarter. The same Kickstarter that can't get enough Taboo comics. With less than 3 days left in the campaign, I thought it would be fun to look into the topic of NSFW comics on Kickstarter in depth. But before that, project updates. Less than 3 days left for Naked Kaiju Woman. At 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the campaign for Naked Kaiju Woman will come to a close. It's been a surreal campaign, as it's found what's easily the biggest audience for a Pesto Comics project in the short time that it's been around. This is being written a little ahead of schedule, and we're still a bit of a distance away from 500 backers. As of this moment, the target remains at 500 backers or more. It's not being unreasonable, as there are 580 followers who haven't backed the campaign yet. Even a third of them will rocket us beyond that target. It was frankly not even a consideration when I hit the launch button on the campaign on January 8th. To have that within our sights is something else entirely. If you haven't backed it yet, don't wait too long. You'll, of course, be able to pick it up during our next campaign with From Parts Unknown number 2, but you won't be able to get all the same sweet bundles as this campaign, or the last few enamel pins. Back it while you still can. Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1 off to the printers. Finally. If I learned anything, it's not to do a thank you page in the back pages. With the comics, I've been pretty good about getting them to the printers the moment funding comes through, but with Big Smoke Pulp, I found myself twiddling my thumbs while I waited for surveys to come in. Now that they finally have, the order has been put in with the printer, and copies should hit my door in a couple of weeks. At this rate, it'll be a couple weeks in a row of fulfillment between Naked Kaiju Woman and Big Smoke Pulp. Good thing I really enjoy the whole process. I'll be sharing more about all of those in the post-mortems in the coming weeks. But now, let's talk about what really sells on Kickstarter, and everywhere else for that matter. Taboo. Indie comics are different. Naughty comics and Kickstarter have been synonymous with one another nearly from the beginning. The whole idea of independent comics is to give readers something that they couldn't pick up at their LCS. Though some would argue you could also get naughty comics at the height of the LCS boom in the 90s too. It's usually a guaranteed hit. Do you want an instant viral social media post? Ask if folks are for or against NSFW comics. You'll get all kinds of answers. Some hate it, swearing they'd never support it. Some say they like it if it's done right. Others say they're not into it, but they don't begrudge others from enjoying it. Few say they're readers themselves. And yet, it's an extremely popular genre of comics. The fact of the matter is that indie comics are meant to tell stories that you can't find anywhere else. They have the ability to service a niche within a niche within a niche, and still find people interested in the niche turducken you've created. That's the magic of it all. Not just for NSFW, but any genre that is underserved in the comics market can find a home on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or Crowdfunder, etc. A different angle. Like most things, there's a nuance to the entire genre of NSFW comics. Sometimes, it's just an excuse to draw naked women in compromising and uncomfortable-looking positions. Other times, it's to get to the heart of sexuality and all the fun, raunchy, emotional goodness that can entail. In my case, I just thought it would be fun to explore the idea of nudity in comics while having some giant kaiju battles through a city. Naked Kaiju Woman came to be as a way for me to dip my toe into the NSFW space without losing the heart of the stories that I like to tell. I've been very clear that although it's very much an NSFW book, it's not your typical Kickstarter nudie book. Raphael, JP, and I are trying to pull something off that's a little different than the norm. More importantly, boobs weren't the only hook for this story. Some backers may have been drawn in by the NSFW angle alone, sure, but most have said they really like the concepts. The how does She-Hulk's clothes stay on when she grows idea, the riff on Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, the satire of nudity in comics in general. That gets folks in the door, and as I still can't believe, more than ever, my hope is that through the story we've put together, we do more than just titillate with the sight of a giant naked woman punching kaiju through buildings. It's hard not to feel like there's nothing but NSFW comics out there, and they're sucking up all the air in the room. It doesn't take long after scrolling the front page of Kickstarter to find dozens of NSFW comic projects coming out every week and breaking through their goals shortly after launching. Much like I pick on the folks at cons selling magnets and stickers, it's hard not to resent these projects for selling out. It's easy to come to the conclusion. Yet, I think it's an oversimplification. There are dozens of creators doing NSFW their way, which happens to be a very engaging, entertaining way. From Kat Camellia and Phil Falco, to Anthony Stokes, to Charlie McKelvey, to Pat Shand, to the many creators at Bad Bug, to all kinds I'm sure I'm missing. Everyone is coming at it in a unique and different way, telling stories that are true to them and not just a straight cash grab. If anything, doing an NSFW comic is barely a guarantee of success, as you're entering the ring with some of the biggest names in indie comics to do so. You have to come with something special to break through. Just having naked ladies, usually, isn't enough on its own. Do I have to do NSFW to be successful? When I wrote Naked Kaiju Woman, it came naturally. I wasn't thinking about how to cash in on a trend on Kickstarter. If I were, I'd have 100 different variants with barely different hair colors and states of undress to hit new goals. I wanted to tell a story about characters I feel for, one of which just happens to be a giant woman who fights monsters. I've put the same level of thought and care into telling this story and growing these characters as I have with any of my projects. Am I happy that I had something that worked for this NSFW crowd? Absolutely. It was a great opportunity. Would I have forced it if I didn't have an idea that worked? Hell no. To answer the question of whether you have to do an NSFW book to be successful, I'd say absolutely not. That's not to say that you should ignore all trends on Kickstarter or the platform of your choice and just do whatever you feel like. Not if you really want to hit new goals and grow your audience. It might be a tougher climb though. You'll find your audience if you're creating great work that breaks through. Superhero comics, for instance, are terribly difficult to sell on Kickstarter, and yet there are a number of creators doing it successfully. All said, if you want to do something deeply personal that may not break through, that's okay too. Just adjust your expectations accordingly. In the long run, it's just about creating new and different comics. I'm still a big fan of all things pulp. I love my noirs, I love sci-fi, but most of all, I love telling stories that have deep characters and fast-paced, multi-layered plots. If it's checking all those boxes, it satisfies my needs, whether they keep their clothes on or not. Until next week. Coming up on the Substack, February 5th. Being cool is overrated. It's time to retire guilty pleasures. February 12th. The postmortem for Naked Kaiju Woman, reviewing the 6th Pesto Comics campaign. And February 19th. Fun with Fulfillment, Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1. Part 2 of the Big Smoke Pulp postmortem. No changes as far as the upcoming appearances go. I have still applied for the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. We'll get results for that mid-February, so I'll be able to tell you whether I got a table there or not. And Fan Expo Canada, no telling when they're going to tell us whether we got a table or not, so we'll have to see. What I'll be attending, for sure, Toronto Comic Con in March and the Toronto Indie Author Conference late April. And then in October, very much hoping to go to New York Comic Con once those tickets are released. So I have those as pending, as nothing's been confirmed thus far. The Pesto Comics release calendar. So I highly recommend, if you're just listening, to check out the post on Substack if you're curious at all. I've actually created the whole calendar for the year. There's some things on there that I don't bother explaining, some things with just acronyms. But the key thing is I have 2 streams going at the same time. So there's all those Kickstarters that I mentioned. You can get a good sense of when those will launch and when you can see the end to the first arc of From Parts Unknown, or the next issue of Naked Kaiju Woman, or the next edition of Big Smoke Pulp. But there's some secrets on there too that I just left acronyms. And I did kind of break it out as to when everything's coming out in text if you'd like to read it that way as well. This is all assuming that, nothing breaks or happens. But I can say with some confidence that at least From Parts Unknown should be able to meet this schedule. And then the Kickstarter for the secret novel in July, there's an event happening that month. I am targeting that one very carefully because I want to make sure we hit that. So that one's pretty solid as well. As far as the Kindle Unlimited stuff, it really depends on when I get things back from editors and all that. But those are my goals. If I have to push it out by a month and shuffle everything down, so be it. But I'm keeping things very ambitious for 2025. If everything goes according to plan, we'll have just over a dozen new projects for this year, which is absolutely wild given that, just 2 years ago I was struggling to get 2 things out. So I've really ramped things up this year. Again, a lot of it is in various stages of progress right now, so it's not as though I haven't started any of this and I'm just hoping. A lot of it is waiting to be released, so we're in really good shape to make this all happen. So yeah, I can't wait to share a lot of it with you because it's going to be very exciting. I'll announce more as we get closer to certain dates and that too. Once things are kind of solid, those Kindle novellas are where things are a little more mushy right now, again, because things aren't 100% solid, but I'm keeping those as a target. But what is solid is the next issues of From Parts Unknown. So be ready for those. I won't read those out to you this week. I highly recommend you check out the post on Substack if you're curious. And on the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast, we have the second part of our conversation with John Westhoff. Again, he was a lot of fun. The first episode's actually doing pretty well on YouTube. We're not talking hundreds of listens. Usually what does well with the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast is the shorts, and those are booming. But what's surprising is people have actually sat and listened to the full conversation. John's a very interesting dude, has a lot to share. It seems like a handful of people are really into that. So yeah, I would recommend checking out the whole thing. You can find that on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere else. And if we're talking about podcasts, I want to thank you for sticking around this long. I really do appreciate it. What does even better than the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast is this podcast. This gets over 100 downloads every week, which feels wild. When we're talking total subscribers and people that actually read the Substack, we're well over 1,000 a week. But the fact that, a tenth of those people sit and listen to me talk for what sometimes can be up to 20 minutes every week, though if you're listening to me at times too, and I highly recommend it, because sometimes I don't always talk so fast. But if you're listening to me at twice the speed, you can make that 10 minutes and really get your fill of everything I have to say every week. But all that said, I really do appreciate everyone who listens and sticks around this long to listen to me ramble on about God knows what. So, again, I want to thank you for how well Naked Kaiju Woman has been going. As I'm recording this, today is the first slow day that campaign has actually had. We are actually, as I speak, in a negative day. We had a couple people cancel some of the things they've backed. It's under 1% of what we've made on the campaign, so my heart's not broken over it, but it does kind of suck because every day has been a triple-digit day as far as funding and double digits as far as backers, so to see it kind of go in the other direction this morning was a little bit of a letdown, but that said, still terribly happy with how this whole campaign is going, and hopefully these next 3 days really allow it to take off in a big way because there are so many people that are following the campaign and just haven't backed yet. There's also a lot of people who have backed previous campaigns who haven't taken a look yet. So a lot of opportunity for some last minute growth. And I can't wait to get into the fulfillment of this. It's going to be wild. There's going to be so many books flying left and right and just making sure that I get everybody's packages right. Whenever I bring things to the shipper, it's usually in the dozens. I'm doing, 50, 60 packages. This is going to be in the hundreds. It's going to be absolutely wild. I can't wait to dig in and really start doing that. And while that's happening, I'm going to have From Parts Unknown launching issue 2 of that. So that's going to be crazy. JP just sent me the first few pages colored, so I'll get lettering those. That book should also be done by the time that campaign is done. So very excited to just keep these things rolling and just always have another project on the ready. A lot of that credit does go to Daniel and JP because they've just been so on top of everything that I haven't had to stress when the next thing will be ready. We've just been so far ahead of schedule. So as long as these things keep funding, I could keep doing them. I have kind of stuck my neck out in terms of getting them paid so that they can work forward. So, I'm always watching those campaigns and how they're doing. But I can say that it is a profitable campaign. It's the first one from Pesto Comics that is profitable. So very happy. And, you know, that will hopefully fund the others going forward. If From Parts Unknown doesn't hit the same heights, that'll be okay, because this profit will feed the next. And if we get to the point that these books are doing as well as I truly hope, then I have some very fun, interesting projects planned that I know maybe won't do as well on Kickstarter, kind of the whole point of this post. But I really want to get done, and I really want to get out there. So I'd love to be a little more experimental, a little more, if I'm being honest, a little more silly with the stuff that I'm doing. And that can only happen if I have the funds to make that happen. So hopefully these campaigns keep hitting the heights they're hitting, and that makes even more possible. I can get more amazing artists out there working. And yeah, I just can't wait for you to see all the cool stuff that we're already working on, that's already planned for 2025. I'm trying not to look past this year into 2026, but I do have stuff planned for out there at this point too. So things are going great, and it's all thanks to you, and I really do appreciate it. Thanks again. I'll let you go for this week. We'll talk next week. See you in February. Have a good one. Thank you.